Absolutely. My name is Gabriel Menotti. I'm your colleague at the Film and Media Department of Queen's University. I work with media, technologies, moving images, social institutions, and yeah, as a professor and a curator as well. I think that my projects that more directly connect with the concept of metaverse and virtual worlds are quite recently Museum Without Walls, which was a very broad exploration of the relationship between museums, media, and architecture as social spaces and institutions, like all these understood as technologies that sometimes work together, sometimes work separately. And a part of this project involved virtual reality technologies, immersive technologies, mixed reality, including a residency, which is kind of the blueprint for what we are doing now with Magic Circles. Spoiler alert. I think that in general, the metaverse has been kind of promoted lately as the sort of next stage internet, just like the Web 2.0 was the next stage web. The metaverse would be the immersive internet, and it would supersede all other forms of communication. Um, I think this is an interesting concept to consider, even though it's more or less the same as the cyberspace was some years ago, or the Matrix was a year ago. Um, and in that sense, it's also good to understand the metaverse as this kind of empty signifier or buzzword that a lot of tech industries use it to just sell themselves to venture capital. Wow, that's a huge question. I think it holds academic significance, especially as this kind of promise, like, and how it plays into wider economies of imagination in the tech world, you know. And most definitely, it grew a lot during the pandemic. The pandemic was this moment of acceleration of expectatives about the end of the world. I think it was the first shock that was felt globally. Like so far, as people say, the future is unevenly distributed and the end of the world already arrived for a lot of people many times. And suddenly the pandemic was the end of the world for the whole world in a way, like end times for everyone. So this has, I guess, triggered this need for solutions as fast as possible. And I guess that a lot of technologies appeared at the moment as promises to save us. And the metaverse was certainly very central to it because it kind of promises us this other world. Like we have kind of destroyed this one, but we can be free in this kind of virtual, weightless, boundless world that computers create for us. Maybe not surprisingly, that movie Ready Player One, awful movie, awful book, was released around a little bit earlier, and it kind of shows that there is already this quasi-religious uh, aspiration for, let's say, techno transcendence. So I think that the pandemic really intensified our need for salvation, so to say. Something that we talked about before, how people never really define what metaverse is, and suddenly it becomes kind of this word salad that involves, well, metaverse, XR, AI, blockchain, blah, blah, blah. It just shows that there's no, let's say, underlying tech. There's just this bloated concept that means to sell you whatever you need to buy. I think, yeah, it's very much related to this idea of metaverse or these technologies as promises that have been unfulfilled, which forces tech companies, new startups to just look for something else that they are able to sell to possible investors, you know? And a lot of these technologies, they are actually good for what they do, you know? I think that we all regret the shutdown of Mozilla Hub servers, the free servers that everyone used. A lot of teachers began using it during COVID for immersive classes, and then they also became the basis of a number of projects for the creation of social small VR worlds that could be accessed even by phones. And Mozilla Hubs works amazingly for what it is in many different situations. It's a terrific tool, but it's not like the new internet. It's not something that is here to substitute the internet or to kind of take us out of this world for whatever. And just as Mozilla Hubs worked well, I guess that Oculus Quest or Meta Quest, the goggles work well for what they do. They're amazing arcade video game machines. Other platforms such as Outspace VR that Microsoft uses to have also work well for what they do, but yeah, they are not the next big thing or whatever, or at least they are not the best next big thing for capital right now. So that's why we're seeing all these initiatives. They're good being closed and just being like the funds being transferred to whatever AI platforms, you know. I think that the games, the virtual worlds, you know, are the perfect example of a situation where these metaverse kind technologies, metaverse like technologies, like the immersive environments, are put to very good use. And people get really invested in them. We already saw this a lot during the pandemic, and it didn't even relate necessarily to completely immersive environments, 3D environments, or even social environments. But a lot of people just escaped from reality into, let's say, Animal Crossing, which is like this social, not really a social game, but a life simulation game where you live in an island, making friends with anthropomorphic animals. So I think that's one of the main drives that gets people into virtual worlds or literature or theater or cinema, which is they need to imagine something different. They need to escape life. They need to open up a space in your everyday life to be someone else, you know? So perhaps that's the reason why some early, again, metaverse-like virtual worlds have been running on for so long, such as Second Life. I remember when I was doing my master's, I guess, Second Life became also again like this promise for the new internet. I remember that in Brazil, some banks were opening spaces in Second Life. And of course, no one who wants to use a bank will go to Second Life for that. It's not convenient at all. You had ATMs, and these days, banks and most of our communications on our phones, it's very utilitarian and it's practical for what it does. But if you want to explore a world, escape from your reality, why not go to a virtual place with amazing vistas where you can bump into crazy people talking about whatever, you know, talking about what you like. And again, uh, Second Life kind of died out in the mainstream, but it has been very alive ever since because people are invested in it. People like it. You have communities there that are thriving. And I guess that these days, the new Second Life is VR Chat. It's a platform where people can create their own spaces. They can express themselves through these spaces. They find like-minded people and they go clubbing in virtual reality. And I mean, it's there, it's going on, it's very alive, very much alive, it's thriving. But it's, yeah, it's not like the world where you go to like live your life, you know. It's the world where you go to escape your life and maybe live your real life, which is your imaginary life. And I think that's amazing, you know, like just like any many other technologies and tools that have been made possible by internet in terms of communication, in terms of sharing ideas, creating together, are used for the same objectives. So yeah, I think that the investment required for these tools, they normally pay off when they are being applied to games because people are very much emotionally invested in games. They do it because they want, not because it's their work. That's a good question. I guess that what we see the most right now are very conservative or even reactionary uses of metaverse technologies. Again, to just repeat reality, to invite people to, again, colonize land, own land, like. And the most interesting thing for me when it comes to these promises are the promises of abundance, of, okay, so if you're having a world that's disconnected from the limits of materiality, why don't we just explore and kind of make the most of the fact that there's no limitation whatsoever? Why do we have to own virtual land in the metaverse? You know, that's kind of silly. So going back to the project that I was talking about, the virtual museum ones, I think that these platforms can be very good ways to communicate aspirations and imaginations about how new institutions can be, how we can recreate society in a completely different way. And they can be these means to connect people and have them working together, very much like a game is. Like you can think about kids, for example, playing Lego together, Lego, like playing with blocks. And the blocks are kind of these vessel, these tools that allow them to imagine a city and maybe together build this city. Why can't virtual worlds, immersive 3D spaces be the same thing? For the Museum Without Walls project, one thing that we did was to create a replica of the museum we were working with in Mozilla Hubs and just have a residency inviting people to not only occupy this museum but transform it completely, reshape, destroy whatever they wanted to do, and they did. And I think it's very fun to look at the versions of the museum they did and think that, yeah, the museum could be like this. And maybe this can be a way to bring these imaginations into reality, or at least to make us question the reality that we have and see that there are other ways forward, that are other possible worlds to live in. And if I can be political right now, I just remember that. Like, there is this famous saying of Margaret Thatcher about capitalism, like, there's no alternative. That's the world that is. And one response to it, a late response, was this idea that another world is possible, which became the slogan of the World Social Forum. Like, let's come together and think about what else can be of reality, you know? And I think that's more important than ever. So it's kind of disappointing when you see a lot of people, for example, talking about the worst aspects of AI and just saying that, yeah, but this technology is here to stay. That's it. That's just another version of there is no alternative. There are always alternatives. They require labor, they require imagination, they require coming together, but they are there. And maybe these technologies can be a way to get to these alternatives instead of just making us be defeatists to what reality we have these days. You get some distance from whatever you're living, you know, from the system you're immersed in, from the ideologies you're immersed in, and play allows you to do so. Fantasy allows you to do so. Fiction, art. So if you think of metaverse as part of this collective of technologies that makes you question and kind of pierce through everyday reality, I think that, yeah, it's powerful precisely because it allows us to escape. I think that virtual worlds is a less loaded word. It's a less loaded word. It refers specifically maybe to a medium, you know, and it seems more straightforward than metaverse, which is again almost an empty signifier. What people call metaverse is not the same that was defined in the original Snow Crash novel, and it's kind of not really the same as what cyberspace was, what cyberspace could be and currently is. So whatever. Virtual worlds allow us to be more specific about we want these shared spaces, somewhat coherent worlds that are made using virtual reality technology, immersive 3D spaces, physics simulations, avatars. So it kind of helps us narrow down the focus of the project and maybe through this exploration go towards a definition or of metaverse, maybe a more negative than a positive one, like exploring what the metaverse is not, then adding to the promises of the tech industries. Perhaps geography, architecture, place
Mm-hmm.
are central.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because it's there in the world, it's there in the verse of the metaverse, like universe. Some of the is there in the circle, the idea of a sphere of activity, you know,
Mm.
and yeah, space is a central element, and space
Space.
as a space of action, a space of agency, a space where people can emancipate themselves. I think that the social aspect is so relevant in that case
Mm-hmm.
because I think that's one things that digital electronic technologies
Mm-hmm.
allow us to have. A book is certainly a way to fantasize together. You know, people write so that other people can read. People read the same book and comment to each other, and they produce marginalia and text, paratext about the books, about the book universes, and that's a way to be together in a fantasy world. But with digital technologies, you have these real-time representations that are responsive to controls that you send to them.
Mm.
So you have really a new speed of representation that allow us to have a different way to share these imaginations. So maybe that's why the social aspect is kind of central. You can also
Mhm.
have that with, yeah, first or individual games. Coming back to um, Animal Crossing that was so prevalent during the pandemic. People shared their screenshots. They created their islands,
Mhm.
shared their screenshots. They also allowed other people to visit their islands. There was no social interaction as far as I remember, but you could visit someone else's exhibition in that space. And to come back to the idea of remaking contemporary art projects in these worlds, someone even did like the Marina Abramovic long durational performance in Animal Crossing. So that's an interesting example. I'd argue that there is a social dimension to it because you're doing it also to other people. Like you're not just having fun by creating these worlds for yourself, but nowadays with the internet, a lot of it is also broadcasted through social media, and you get um, something out of the responses of people to your work as well. But maybe, yeah, that would be what I really like about the
Mhm.
internet as not a content producing channel,
Mhm.
but as a communication channel for dialogue to
Mhm.
exist. It's kind of a virtual reality online residency, and here you can see part of our amazing poster, Laboratory of Virtual Worlds. And what we want is to bring together people who are already exploring the many different virtual worlds that are there, that we could call proto metaverse, if we were to believe that they would evolve into a metaverse. I really don't think so. I think they are good as they are in their particularities, but yeah, some people are working in these spaces. Some people are making movies in these spaces, performances. They are documenting the communities that are already there. They are creating artwork and installations for these spaces. For example, in Minecraft, you always see people creating these amazing, huge scale pixel art and land art, we could say. You have people doing film in VR chat, interviewing people who are part of VR chat communities. You see a lot of people questioning, for example, the economy of Fortnite and Roblox, which are massive platforms that involve lots of people, especially young people, are kind of also content production platforms, and we don't see these spaces being discussed within the same framework as the metaverse. And why not? These spaces are alive, they have communities, they have very interesting things going on. So as researchers, we want to bring the people who are already in these spaces together so that they can develop some of their projects with the support of Magic Circles, both financial support and, let's say, conceptual support. And this would allow us also to bring these projects to the fore. And through these projects, get a little bit of better understanding about these different virtual worlds that are out there.
Mhm.
And the project is very much shaped as a laboratory, taking inspiration from screenplay laboratories. So we want works in progress, people who are doing work right now, and we are not expecting them to have finished this work when our program ends. Um, who knows how long they will take to finish their work? We just want to kind of intersect with their processes for a while so that we can, yeah, explore alongside with them these amazing new spaces.
Okay, thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.